In this video, I'll discuss author's purpose and point of view. Our learning objective is to be able to analyze Patrick Henry's purpose and point of view in Speech to the Second Virginia Convention. Let's begin with a question. Think of an advertisement that you saw on TV or in a magazine. What was the message of the ad? What was it intended to do? Who was the intended audience? And was the ad effective? The first thing that comes to mind for me is the billboards that you see when you're driving down the highway. They only have a few seconds to grab your attention and give you the information that you need. There's an art to this, and it's primarily visual. And think about this. Why does Coca Cola continue to advertise? I mean, who hasn't heard of Coke? Here's a thought. Maybe their purpose isn't to inform you about their product, but rather to persuade you that you're thirsty and that a refreshing ice cold Coca Cola sounds like a great way to quench your thirst. When I was a kid, I read a lot of comic books, and there were always advertisements in the back, and some of them looked like comic strips. One that I remember in particular is this skinny kid who's getting sand kicked in his face by this much bigger bully. The ad was selling an exercise book, and there were a lot of other similar ads like this with premises of a skinny kid getting picked on by a bigger guy that sold things like exercise equipment or even sometimes pills that promised to build muscle mass. In all these cases, they knew who their audience was. 11 and 12-year-old geeky boys who wanted to be tough like the superheroes that they enjoyed reading. I also remember the toy advertisements that would come in the Sears catalog. I couldn't wait for the annual toy catalog to come out just before Christmas, and I would tear through those pages like a hurricane, circling everything that I hoped Santa would bring me. Those advertisements didn't have to have a lot of words. All they needed was to show the toys and maybe a kid having fun playing with them. The adoring mom at the shoulder of this kid is a pretty nice touch. Way to hook the parents. Happy kid, happy mom. You see, companies pay a lot of money for advertising, and they have specialists who know how to tailor their messages to a target audience. There's an art and a science to persuading people to buy something or to support a cause. And that's exactly what Patrick Henry did in his speech to the Second Virginia Convention. Authors write for different purposes. One purpose could be to inform or provide an explanation for an audience. This could be as simple as a weather report or instructions on registering to vote. Another purpose could be to provide entertainment, like many of the novels that we read. And another purpose could be to try to persuade an audience to take action or to support a cause. This was the case with Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail. The author's point of view, however, is a little more complicated. Here you have to ask what the author's personal views are on whatever topic or subject that they're writing about, and how much their personal views might be influencing what they write. This is often called author's bias. And bias isn't necessarily a bad word. Everyone has an opinion or a view on a topic. That's just human. But our task is to be able to identify the author's point of view or their bias in their writing. Sometimes authors will directly state their point of view. For example, maybe the author is writing an article about gun ownership. They may be clear that their view is in support of the Second Amendment right to bear arms. Or they may be clear that their view is in support of increased regulations and bans on certain types of firearms. In other instances, their point of view may not be directly stated. In those cases, we have to make some inferences and do some detective work to figure out their point of view. When it comes to Patrick Henry, I think his point of view is pretty clear in his speech to Second Virginia Convention. See if you agree with me. And that brings us to the tasks for this skill lesson. First, if you haven't already, watch the concept definition video and read the introduction on tab 1. This will help you better understand the concept. Next, complete the short vocabulary drag and drop on activity tab 2 and just to make sure that you are familiar with the terms used in this skill. Next, watch the Skills TV video on the model page. This video contains a super useful discussion on identifying author's purpose and point of view. It's worth your time. After you finish watching the video, then carefully read through the rest of the model page. The top half provides specific instructions and a checklist for applying the skill. The bottom half contains a student example. Carefully read through the student's annotations and comments. Pay attention to how he uses details from the speech to identify Patrick Henry's audience and the purpose of his speech. How does the student explain what Patrick Henry does to persuade his audience and deliver his message? When you're ready, complete the Your Turn activity on tab 4 and check your results. Being able to identify an author's purpose and point of view are essential skills for engaging with informational and argumentative texts. But they can be tricky. Sometimes an author can have multiple purposes. Sometimes they aren't super forthcoming about their point of view. I think in the case of Speech to the Second Virginia Convention, Patrick Henry's purpose and point of view are pretty clear. But if you find yourself getting stuck or confused, don't hesitate to talk to me.